Did you know that World of Warcraft is more than just a video game? It is also an incredible book series that I think you should read. So today I'm going to cover where to start, because there's a lot of them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reading Crossbow podcast. My name is Lana, and today I am talking about all things World of Warcraft. Also, if you've been here before, you know I have a co-host named Rob. So how this series works is we do one episode a week, and usually we read 2 books a month. So Rob picks one. He loves grimdark, he loves horror, he loves sci-fi, he also loves fantasy. And then I also pick a book, and I usually pick fantasy and often lead towards romantic fantasy. So we cover a lot of fantasy on this series, and then at least 2 episodes a month, we're each covering something that we're passionate about. So that's what I'm doing today. I am covering a book series that I have been passionate about for a long time, which is the World of Warcraft series. However, this series can be very intimidating to get into because there's so many books and it's hard to know where to begin. So where do you begin? So I'm going to approach this from a few different perspectives because I thought about this hard. I could really approach this from really just readers in general. Like, where would you start? Where would I recommend starting for all different types of readers? So there was that option. But then there was also, are you a big fan of the World of Warcraft video games? And if so, do we approach this from like Horde versus Alliance? And then there's class types. Do you play Hearthstone like I do? I play a lot of Hearthstone. Also World of Warcraft, of course. Do we approach this from like different class types? Are you a fan of Mage, Hunter, Rogue, Warcraft, Paladin, Priest? Where do we begin? So I thought about this, and I think we're going to begin from readers in general. So just overall, what type of reader are you? Because we have a lot of different fans of this show. So I think we're going to take that angle, but then I'm also going to pepper in a little bit of like, well, are you Horde? Are you Alliance? And what type of class do you prefer to play? Because I really think that that might have a big bearing on if you've had some sort of experience with World of Warcraft and you have a preference, where should you jump in? So let's start. Where do we begin reading World of Warcraft books? So I have this website pulled up because it's very helpful. This is the Warcraft Tavern. And this is an article about where do you begin or where do you start with World of Warcraft books. And there's this top 5, which begins with Rise of the Horde. This is great. I have read all 4 in this top 5. I haven't read Day of the Dragon. I don't know why. I probably just got you know what? Actually, I know why. I got really excited because I read the first 4, and then I got into certain types of characters, which is why we're approaching this way, because you might like characters more. I read the first 4, and then I went straight to Before the Storm, and then I kind of went backwards and did some Arthas, some Wolfheart, things like that. But we'll get to that. Anyway, you should start, pretty much everyone. Like if you want to ignore the rest of the advice in this episode and just start with one book only, it is Rise of the Horde. Why? Because this is basically where it all begins. Now there's some backstory, there's some old gods, there's some more of the ancients, yes, all of that. But that's kind of like technical and gets deep lore-y. And this is a great place to start because the first video game was orcs and humans. So this is really the story from the orc side of where it began, where we begin with the orcs before they cross over into the human world. Now there's a lot of deep history here because the orcs aren't just one group or one type. They are split. They're divided. So there's like orcs before they're corrupted and after they're corrupted. So this first book, Rise of the Horde, begins with the orcs on a planet called Draenor. And this is before they go into Azeroth, which is basically the human world, sort of. There's a lot to it. It's not just humans, but from what we need to know starting here. All right. So on their planet of Draenor, we have the amazing character Durotan, which is an uncorrupted orc. I'm not going to go too much into the corruption. That's what the whole story is about. But it is really awesome. A great story about war, clans divided, if you like clan types, almost Viking feeling, and also a bit of love, because in this book, Durotan meets his mate, and this sets up the whole story also for Thrall, which is a character in World of Warcraft that a lot of people call Green Jesus. So great place to start. Love this book. And I can't say enough great things about it. It's still my favorite book after reading all of the other books. Start there. It's also great if you watch the World of Warcraft movie. Hold your thoughts on that, please. I know there's a lot of thoughts on the World of Warcraft movie. You know what? Maybe I'll talk about it. We'll see. But if you watch the movie and you're like, I don't know, I maybe kind of liked it. Where do I begin now? Yes, there. Also, it's important to note, and if we scroll down on this website, you'll see that there's the Chronicles of War and the Archive. And basically these books, as you can see here, have combined some of the first 4 or first 5. Now, some of them are a bit out of order, and you can see The Last Guardian is in both of these. But if you wanted to pick just one of them, I would pick Chronicles of War, because those are the first 4 that I read as well, which is Rise of the Horde, Last Guardian, Tides of Darkness, and Beyond the Dark Portal. I did not buy the compilation. I bought them all separately, as you can see, but it would save you quite a bit of money. It says that these are between $15 and $20 on Amazon. And if you bought them all separately, it'd probably be about $60. All right, so moving on to different reader types. That first recommendation was in general, right? So now if you are a lover of lore, if you are a lover of the World of Warcraft video games, if you know a lot about World of Warcraft already, then I would recommend starting the Chronicles. So there's 1 through 3. And I am very strongly letting you all know that you should not pick up the Chronicles if you aren't a big fan of World of Warcraft, or you're just getting into this, you're dipping your toe. Do not start there. Let me tell you why. This is deep, 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 deep lore. This is not going to contain any of the modern, well-known characters like Sylvanas or Arthas or even Garrosh, Hellscream, Jaina. None of those characters are going to be in there. However, you are going to get a lot of the night elves, a lot of the old guards, a lot of the early demons that began this series, especially like leading into Rise of the Horde, like I talked about. It's really cool. This is where you get the ancient characters, but definitely not a good place to start. Cool fact though, I didn't put them here, I own them. They're huge books, they're really big, and they're beautiful. They're also quite expensive. So if you're not sure if you're gonna like World of Warcraft, I just wouldn't start there also for the cost. But they're beautifully illustrated, there's amazing pictures, there's pictures from in-game, the lore is deep, it's rich, it's beautiful, but I would go back to the Chronicles after you've dipped your toe into the series and started reading some of these books. And then again, if you're super, super connected to this franchise, then yeah, go ahead and start there. But really, in my opinion, I treated them as like great picture books. I would turn to the different pages and I would find some beautiful picture or something cool and I'd want to read about it. And that's kind of how I've approached the Chronicles. I read the first one cover to cover, and then the other ones I've kind of like gone back and forth and taken what I've needed from them. All right, next up is my dragon girlies. So this is probably going to be my favorite place to talk about reading World of Warcraft books. And also, I shouldn't say girlies, really anyone, but you guys know what I mean, my dragon girlies. So if you have read Fourth Wing, or if you have read any of the fun romantasy kind of elf smut out there, these books are still for you. And I know you're thinking, what? No way. I love elf smut. I love fantasy. So do I. But these will not have that in there. These are very family friendly. So in terms of spice level, it's pretty much a 0. However, if you love stories of love and stories of humans and dragon aspects and, even dragons who can turn themselves and transform into other characters, shapeshift, become a human form, an elf form, then these books are definitely for you. There's mind reading between dragons. There's talking between humans and dragons. It is so, so good. There's also different flights of dragons, bronze flight, blue flight, and there's different aspects to them, actually. Aspects is a thing, but you know what? We won't get into that. So if you are my dragon girlies, right, my romantasy girlies, there is a place for you in World of Warcraft lore. So let's talk about that. So you probably think I'm going to talk about the books like Day of the Dragon. That would be a good place to start. However, I'm not going to recommend starting there because I think my dragon girlies still love having a strong female character. Now, usually that's human or usually that's elf or fairy in the type of books that we read. We don't have that, but we do have a mage named Jaina. Now, Jaina is a very strong World of Warcraft character in the lore. She's fantastic. She's one of my favorite characters. And I recommend that you actually start with Tides of War. Now, some of you World of Warcraft people might be like, whoa, that's a weird place to start because there's a lot of trauma in that book. Yes, but there's also a lot of love in this book. So I love Tides of War by Christie Golden. And here's why. Calicos. So Jaina and Calicos, which is a blue dragon, by the way, have a thing. And I love their love story, and it's really sweet. So just for that purpose of my dragon girlies, I would start with this book. But know that this book is very much about war and someone's inner turmoil. So Jaina, who is a very peaceful mage, wants to have peace between the clans, peace, no war. She basically kind of goes down the dark path, ends up going down into some evil destruction, gets really pissed off, basically, and becomes a super powerful mage who creates this giant tsunami, and I won't say the rest, but there's a lot of devastation. This is also really great if you love reading about the Horde or you play Horde class. This has a lot to do with Garrosh Hellscream. So great book between a dragon, a mage, their love, how that story unfolds, and how she turns from peaceful, sweet mage to crazy, badass bitch. So amazing place to start, but it might cause some confusion because you might not have some of the backstory. But I think if you jump into this book and just read it for what it is, just kind of forget, put up a wall in your mind of I might not know what they're talking about. That's okay. Let it be. This is the type of book where you can read on and kind of ignore those pieces and then jump backwards and then start with Rise of the Horde and move on. But this is just a great place to start. Bonus points if you want to go a little bit more into the lore and also kind of dive off a little bit, go into a whole nother storyline. You could read Arthas just to understand what made her become who she is. Now, Arthas is about the Lich King, and that does not tie into this storyline at all, really. I mean, someone's going to say, yes, it does. Yes, I know, but not enough for the Dragon Girly reader jumping in. The reason why you might like Arthas is because it talks about the story of Jaina as a youth when she's just learning to become a mage, and she finds this incredibly handsome paladin named Arthas, and their love story begins. But that love story does not last long and crumbles, and then you can appreciate why her relationship with Calicos is so special. So, my Jaina, my mage lovers, my dragon girly lovers, this is for you. All right, so moving on, because I know there's a lot of you who are fans of Rob, who's my co-host on this show. I would be remiss if I did not tackle where to begin if you're a grim dark lover or a horror lover. I would start with war crimes. Now, this is the story of the big old baddie, Garrosh Hellscream, from World of Warcraft. And it is a fantastic story because this covers his trial. We're not going to go into why he has a trial. You'll get that in the book. But this also covers one of my absolute favorite characters in World of Warcraft lore, which is Bane Bloodhoof. Now, Bane Bloodhoof is a Tauren, and he has to represent Garrosh at his trial. Now, Bane and the Tauren, they're, well known for being peacekeepers, kind of like what I talked about Jaina earlier, peaceful, don't want war, but also prideful. There's a lot of pride that comes with Bane. Read it in the book, not going to tell you, but this dichotomy between Bane and Garrosh and good versus bad and war versus not and corruption versus not is so cool. And there's also a lot of Jaina in here. I just talked about Jaina from before. So earlier when I was talking about Jaina, also know that she's in here quite a bit. But anyhow, Grimdark, I would start with war crimes, and then I might actually go straight into Tides of War, which is that Jaina book I was just talking about. So you could almost read Warcraft and Tides of War like a duology. Now, Tides of War is a bit of a cliffhanger. It's going to leave you at a spot. It's going to break your heart. It's going to leave you crumbling, want to cry, what the hell, keep going from there, but that's okay. The cliffhanger's badass. So anyway, War Crimes goes into Tides of War. Great duology if you're like, I don't want to do the whole thing. I'm with you. I get you. But hey, my Rob fans, this is where you start. Also, my Rob fans, Arthas. Grimdark, you have to read Arthas. Now, I mentioned Arthas a little bit when I was talking about Jaina and my dragon girlies. Arthas is a story of a very good paladin. So paladins, I think of paladins as like the golden retrievers of the World of Warcraft world. So if there was ever a golden retriever to start with, it would have been Arthas. However, Arthas hears the call of a sword, a relic that calls to him, and that sword, Frostmourne, corrupts. So anyway, this is the story of Arthas' corruption and how he becomes the big, badass Lich King, which so much World of Warcraft lore is based around. There's a whole expansion on it. You love, you hate Arthas. I think mostly you just love Arthas because you're rooting for him either way, even when he becomes a big baddie. I don't know. Arthas is just a fun character. Actually not my favorite character, although he's a lot of people's favorite characters, because I still cannot forgive Arthas for what he does to Jaina in this book. Pisses me off to no end. Arthas, start here if you just love a good dark storyline. All right, next we are going to go into Lovers of the Dark Lady. Now, this doesn't cover a reader type because we've covered Dragon Girlies, we've covered Grimdark, we've covered like general all-around reading, good place to start. But this is if you love a good, strong female heroine, but also if you just love the Dark Lady, you're a member of the Horde, or you play Hunter in Hearthstone like I do, I would start with Before the Storm. Okay, why start with Before the Storm? Before the Storm was a book that came out as a bridge before the Battle for Azeroth expansion. So this is very much Anduin versus Sylvanas. It is a war story. But why is it so good? It's so good because you really get to see both sides. This is truly, truly Horde versus Alliance. Great book. I actually don't want to go into too much about the plot line. It's just fantastic, and you learn a lot about the Dark Lady, and you find yourself rooting for both sides in this book. That's hard to say, but Anduin, people like to say he's a whiny baby king. Okay, cool, whatever. He's also a badass, and you get to learn a little bit about Valeera. I've cosplayed Valeera. Those of you who followed me in my Valeera journey, she's in here. Love that. But you know what? It's interesting to understand like both sides of the story and why this is all going on. We also get into the Forsaken, Azerite, goblins, gnomes. It's kind of all in here, and it's super fun. And this is also maybe not quite tied, but up there with a good starting point. Maybe you've seen the movie before. You have a little bit of Warcraft lore. This is a good place to start. However, it's interesting because we're talking about the Dark Lady. This is the Dark Lady at her darkest. There's a lot of like bad, naughty stuff she does in this book, and she wipes out a whole bunch of people, super evil, super mean. Okay, however, before Dark Lady was Dark Lady, she was an elf ranger. So this book is Sylvanas. It's actually one of my least favorite books in terms of writing style, but it's still one of my more favorite books in terms of the story. So how did she become evil, dark, badass Horde queen? It starts here. So she was a elf ranger first. So this takes you to the beginnings. And also Arthas, big bad meanie, he's the one who turned her into a baddie. Not nice. Here you go. If you love the Dark Lady, start here. Start here and then go backwards to here. Now, I know sometimes I start you further in the storyline, and that is on purpose. That's because you need to understand the conflict. You need to get deep into their minds and their struggle, and then go back to the beginning to understand it. Because I don't think this book would be as impactful, actually, if you read this first. So, forward, backwards, trust me. All right, getting close to the end. Last up, if you are a fan of strong hero types, I have your starting point. This is also for fans of Warhammer who have followed our podcast because of that. We know we have a lot of follows and subscribers because of our Warhammer episodes. I know where to start for you. So my strong hero paladin types, if you play paladin, if you play priest in World of Warcraft or Hearthstone, I strongly recommend starting with Wolfheart, which is the story of Varian Wrynn, which is Anduin's father. So we get a lot of the setup in this book between Anduin and his father and why they have the complicated relationship that they do. Also, bonus points, we find out why Varian is Logosh, which is some Worgen lore, some wolf stuff, maybe some of my dragon girlies who like wolfy things might actually potentially like this too. It's a sort of cool story. But anyway, this is a story about a father and his son, and also a man's journey into understanding. I love this book also because it brings a lot of the night elves into the story. So we have Worgen, we have night elves, we have conflict. We have a kingdom, we have king, courts, all the cool stuff. But also the Night Elf story, I love Tyrande. Tyrande is one of my favorite characters as well. So we have Tyrande, we have Malfurion, we have Maiev. We have a lot of strong characters in the video game that show up in this book. So if you like strong characters, if you are the paladin type, start here. All right, last up. If you were a fan of the Warcraft movie, I know there's not many of you, but if you were, then I would read The Last Guardian. Also, if you're a fan of playing mage, or if you just like spellcraft, sort of wizardry, maybe you're a Harry Potter fan, I'm not so sure. This would be a great place to start. Why? Because I am going to talk about the movie a little bit. I'm going to give a conflicting opinion here. Some of you might not agree with me, but I actually think the Warcraft movie was great for non-Warcraft peoples. Now, let me explain. If you're a video game and you're trying to get new players, you're trying to expand, you've been out a while, how do you approach a new audience? Well, you make a cinematic. I totally agree with that. Now, you need to try to bring in this new audience. Did it do a good job of that? I don't know. I haven't seen the numbers. I don't know revenue. I have no idea. Did it help? Did it not? What it did do is it did take some very deep, complex lore. Some of you might say it scrubbed it down or sanitized it. Yeah, kind of. But it did that in a way that I think people who aren't big fans of the video game might be able to actually kind of dip their toe into the waters of Warcraft. So I was actually okay with it because for me, I want more people to find, discover, love Warcraft. So like, even though they kind of scrubbed it up a little bit, kind of like, I don't even want to say dumbed it down, but I kind of, was that good? In my opinion, yes. If you're trying to get new people to love the franchise. Is it great for people who already love the franchise? Probably not. But I know people who love the franchise, love playing the game, who still liked the movie. So I don't know. Take it for what you will. But if you watched the movie, or if you want that starting point, which is kind of the battle between the orcs and humans and how the orcs get into our world, then start here. This is the story of Khadgar. Khadgar is a mage, and Medivh, also a mage, and their part in getting the orcs into our human world. This also goes back to Azeroth, the kingdom, a lot of the setup for the Wrens, and how that all works out. And so The Last Guardian, good book. Good book, especially a good book if you need the movie cleared up, because this is the correct version, obviously, and the movie just glazed over the details. So the Fel, how it affects Azeroth, all of that, good place. Also, this is really great for like corruption and destiny and consequences of war. So if you like war type books, also just good. And you know what? Kind of cool because we get like golems and cool magic stuff. So if you just love magic in general, here you go. All right, I hope that was helpful. I hope you're inspired to pick up a World of Warcraft book. Honestly, the basis in these books, I think, is where some of the story comes from some of the other books that we've read. You cannot have some of the dragon books that we've had without World of Warcraft. You cannot have some of the amazing war stories we've had without Jaina, without Thrall, without Garrosh Hellscream, without Sylvanas, without Anduin and Varian and Malfurion and Tyrande and Maiev and Illidan and all these amazing characters. So if you are loving a lot of the fantasy that you're getting out there now on Book Talk, maybe reel it back, maybe go back to the beginning and take a look at what some of these writers have done and how they've contributed to World of Warcraft lore. We'll check you next week. Thanks for hanging out today. Make sure to like and subscribe, support the channel because we're almost to the first level partner. Appreciate you all.